So I'm just coming out of the gym and I figured I'd take time to make this video real quick. I also cut my hair. It was looking stupid and goofy. I've been wanting to cut it for a while. I just haven't had time or money to cut it, so I just cut it myself. Anyway, so that video I made a few days ago where I talk about America's not America anymore and the Americans aren't paying their bills and taxes video, I also made a few days after. They are both blowing up like dynamite, going viral. And just yesterday alone, my phone was blowing up like every 10 or 15 minutes or so. And I was just quite impressed with how many people were seeing it. But a lot of the comments I saw on it were kind of dumb. Like, the video I made was so great, nobody listened to anything that I talk about in it. And I think I'll just talk about what I need to say further. Leaving the gym and there's another cop hanging around the parking lot just sitting there. Like, everywhere I go there's just cops patrolling everything. Like, America is looking like China as time goes on. Some of the comments I saw in that video were just pretty raunchy and ridiculous. There was one comment that literally said to me, "You look like you have autism or disabilities," which is pretty disrespectful. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm like, hey, you know what? Even if I was autistic and had disabilities, isn't it pretty sad that an autistic person with brain damage can figure out that the government and the Federal Reserve and IRS is screwing its country since 1913? And I'm also smart enough to know my Bill of Rights and Constitution, but you don't. I write to foreigners quite a lot and have since 2019. I've noticed that when I write to foreigners, I never have this problem. They are warm, welcoming, friendly people that have real conversations and discussions with me. But meanwhile, the people in America just seem like they have like the mentality of a 15-year-old from high school. And it just seems like they're disrespectful, rude, entitled. They have what I call TikTok brain. They cannot stay focused. I only talk on the video for about 14 minutes or so, but they just can't seem to stay focused or listen to what I'm talking about in it. And when foreigners have a comment and don't agree with it, they're more professional. They say things like, yeah, I don't agree with you on this part, and this part, and this part, but it's your opinion, basically. Instead of where Americans just say a bunch of nonsense. Like, it's gotten to the point that I just don't even read it anymore. And there was one comment I saw with an Adolf Hitler logo saying, "Go back to your cave," and I'm like, yeah, that's definitely not worth my time getting a response from. So to do a quick recap on the video, I'm basically talking about how, like, I went from having my own apartment in San Diego, California in 2019, and then having 2 other apartments after that, which was my last one in Miami, Florida. And then after the economy in 2021, it was all gone. And now I have to go back to the rat race and start over. And then I'm talking about how I'm sleeping in my car in Boston, working day and night on DoorDash. And there was parts I forgot to explain on the video, but I was there looking for bartending work, and I was handing my resume to like 30 different places all around the Boston area, and I was not getting my foot in the door. And when I asked a couple of bars why, and was kind of being a detective about it, this one bar in particular in the historic district, I think it was called Hennessy's and Dirty Nelly's, they didn't like me after that, and there was a bit of a British and American fight after that. And in the end, they showed me the door, which to me was kind of stupid. Turned out that everywhere you go, it's oversaturated with bartenders and people looking for work in the city of Boston alone. So especially when you're homeless, you have a harder time looking for work. And all in all, I'm kind of like, this does not resemble America. Why is it so hard to find a job? Why don't I have a home? Why am I not able to find a good job? Why is nothing affordable? Like, inflation is on the rise, and no one can afford to live on minimum wage, let alone $20 an hour at 84 hours a week. It's not a livable wage. Now, you say that, and the sheep in America laugh at you, just like the comments on the last video. It's reached to the point that I just stopped reading it. Like, these videos and topics I make of this discussion are so great and straight to the point, and should be a wake-up call to our citizens for the government screwing its people over. Most people don't listen or do anything that I talk about in them. In the U.S., countrywide, we have no affordable living whatsoever. Inflation has skyrocketed to where practically minimum wage is impossible to even pay your bills. No one can even to make a living on their own at $20 an hour at 84 hours a week. It's not a livable wage. Even here in the cornfields in the middle of nowhere in the suburbs of Cincinnati, Ohio, it's not affordable. Like, I remember 8 years ago, we used to be one of the top 5 most affordable cities in America. You could practically live here or even like the outskirts of the city of Cincinnati for like minimum wage. You could live on South Lebanon for $450 a month. But now even here, it's overly crowded with rent and home prices skyrocketing. Like, everywhere you go, there's just no affordable living. I mean, really, how is it that there is no affordable living anywhere? And they build all of these new homes, apartments, businesses, and build more roads all the time, but we have no affordable living whatsoever. This area to my left, which is all being houses built, was the same area that's on the right side. Just a cornfield. It has been for the longest time. But now they're building more houses. They're driving in and out of our neighborhood. They're making all this noise. And overall, they have all these new homes and buildings and destructing nature, changing the climate. But yet, we have no affordable living. Like, with this lack of affordability and job opportunities, how are people able to afford to buy these houses? So to talk further about the original video, I had a lot of keef and some weed left over on my grinder, and I piled it all up and smoked it. And I didn't think it'd get me that high off my ass. And I was remembering what happened in Boston, about 70% of it, but just enough to talk about in the video. And I was mainly doing it for like friends and family, and maybe some other people out there to see and listen to what I'm talking about. Within like the second day, it was blowing up at like 1.1 thousand views, and people comment on like every 10 minutes. I'm kind of antisocial, so it was kind of draining my social batteries. And I wasn't always antisocial. It's just when you deal with how people have been since 2020 and what you see in the comments, it drains your social batteries after a while. But that's not the point here. So to go further on and add some stuff that may have not made sense in the video. So yeah, I was looking for bartending work. What originally happened was I was living with someone I knew from high school, and I wasn't able to get a job anywhere because it's a tourist state. But I'm not going to mention what happened because I still care about this guy and I don't want to seem like a dick. So let's just say I had to leave, and I ended up being homeless in Boston, and it was entirely by choice. I could have just came back here, but I mainly wanted to look for bartending work because I felt like with everything I've done, I could achieve anything. So I was looking for bartending. I handed in 30 resumes. And I had no luck, and it was because I didn't have a physical address. People in Boston were kind of helpful. Boston's a weird city. It's very introverted. I look back, and I think the reason I was rejected everywhere was probably because I lost myself in my mind. You know, if you have a mindset that's scared and in fear and seeking approval, which I talked about in my Miami video of how I lost everything, that's going to repel people. And so I think that might have been what happened. Was if you're kind of needy, desperate, and you're homeless, and you look like you haven't slept, and your shirt looks old and wrinkly, that's just going to scream repulsive. I tried wearing a suit and tie, which was overdressing to its max. I think that might have been what happened too. I think if I had just chilled the fuck out, didn't seem desperate and needy, maybe I would have landed. Desperate times, desperate measures, right? After all that, I found a place to rent in Lynn, which was a total disaster. The person I lived with was on meth and shit. I have a video right here what I dealt with.
Step in and try to figure out what to do now. Because you all don't get it.
I've been hearing this all morning, and it goes on every day. Every day. Dealing with that every day and night. Being locked out of the door first week moving in because I didn't have the keys yet. It was overall a disaster. If you want me to talk about more of this video of Boston, just leave a comment. I just want to move on with it. So I remember after all of that, I ended up trying to get out of there. But due to how expensive Boston was and DoorDash being oversaturated as well, I couldn't get a better job. I wasn't making enough money to do anything. I slept in my car and I didn't have the gas money to get back to my hometown. So it was like a hamster wheel, but 10 times worse because you don't have a place to live. All right, so now the topic about that is over. I can move on with what I'm talking about. So America's just overall not America anymore. You're gonna notice like we have lack of choices. Everyone's more stressed. Everyone's more overwhelmed. People are working more and more hours just to be able to afford the things they used to 10 years ago. Overall, it just seems like the infrastructure is crumbling down. Terrible homeless situation. People are stressing about their jobs, stressing about money, stressing to afford this and that. You know, with all this going on, like, I don't have a place to live. It just seems like I'm more dependent on the government and more dependent on a job where I don't make real money. Home prices are way unaffordable. There's a huge competition on buying a home and an apartment. And overall, with all this going on, it's a little overwhelming, and America is starting to look like a third world country. And as I said in the previous video, like, everything I've seen and heard about America and history, movies, TV shows, and what foreigners tell me about it, and it being the American dream. But then I see the reality of it when I finish high school. And this to me is like, I don't get it. I don't get why this is my reality of America compared to what I hear about it 20 years ago. When I look back at what life was like in my high school time 16 years ago, it was really simple and amazing. I lived in the state of Maine back then, Durham, and I went to Lisbon High School where Stephen King graduated. So I get on my bike, ride on the dirt roads in the woods, in the trails, go down the hill, across the Androscoggin River, towards Lisbon, head to the convenience store, and inside there'd be 30 different beverages to choose from, 15 different companies, a huge menu of choices on what to eat and snack on, hang around the bench outside sipping on the drinks before heading to school, talking to the townspeople who just enjoyed life. This is before we had smartphones and social media taking us over. So life was simple back then. It was the country life. And as I'm biking to school, I would meet up with all of our buddies and we'd all just talk about what we did on the weekend or what we did like tonight or what we're gonna do this weekend or just overall enjoying life. None of us had our phones out. None of us were even looking at our phones because it was just for texting and calling. That was it. I remember once school was over, we would head to the other convenience store with more choices and more colors and designs and creativity on their logos and stuff. I would hop on the bike and head over to a buddy's house. And this is back before we had to worry about criminals and stuff. So we would just like walk right in and the kids' parents would be like, "Who is it?" And I'd be like, "Hey, it's Steve." And they'd be like, "Hey, Steve. Yeah, he'll be down in a minute." The only time we really used our phones back then was to call our parents, let them know where we're at, what we're doing, when we're coming back. That was actually the reason I had a phone. Other than that, my parents didn't seem any use to it. And we would hang out in the buddy's basement and just watch movies on a projector, go on the computer and check our Facebook and MySpace for like 10 minutes tops. We didn't really have the need to be on it for any longer than that. And I remember social media and YouTube videos were funny and creative back then. And life was just overall simple back then. We would carpool one of our buddies' cars or trucks and drive to the other side of town in Brunswick and just have a good time. Like, all of us were together riding bikes, get in the cars, and just overall, we were all enjoying life. Nobody was on their phones. Nobody was talking about social media or YouTube people. Like, I kind of miss those days, and it makes me feel sad knowing that those times are just a memory compared to what it is now. When you hear stories of what America was like during our grandparents' generation, they were able to finish high school, start a minimum wage job, rent a place at $49 a month while making $6 a day, as minimum wage was 75 cents an hour back then. A house was $1,800. Basically, you could practically live on minimum wage, start out with a place to rent, get married, start a family, taking care of the family while looking for a better paying job, and then have a house by the age of 20 with your career. Today, that's not a thing anymore. And that's actually what I was trying to talk about on the previous video is compared to what it was in the 50s and the 60s, let alone 30 years ago, that's not a thing anymore. Like, more people are homeless living in their cars now. And people are just either too ignorant or too focused on other things to not see it, because most people have what I call TikTok brain. Like, they can't even remember what happened like in 2020 or pre-COVID. And it's really concerning, because as a person who doesn't focus on TikTok or short videos or other sources of entertainment, I have a very good memory. Like, I can remember as far back as 30 years ago. And people are just thinking it's autism and shit. And it's just like, no, it's because I eat a proper nutrition. I cleanse myself with water. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't drink alcohol like I used to. So I have a really good memory and better health than most people. And it concerns me that most people can't even remember what happened 5 years ago. And I say to them, how do you not remember? And one of my family members said it's their jobs and TikTok is why they have a short attention span. And it's really sad. Like, overall, like, a situation where you're working at a job and you work all day and you stack money and you're still broke in the end, that's a terrible job. You can't blame that because it's the government and the system. Like, I went from having apartments of my own to this. And it's like, I don't get it. I don't get why this is my reality. I've made tons and tons of videos about this topic. I comment the best I can. Nobody seems to get the message, but I'm just gonna keep saying it because I'm a proud American and I stand up for myself. I stand up for my rights. And overall, you're paying taxes on every single goddamn thing, and yet the infrastructure is still crumbling down. The country has no money, especially California and New York. There's a terrible homeless situation. There's no job opportunities. All your taxes go to the feds and the IRS just to pay back the money they print. Since 1913, they've been screwing us over and nobody's done a thing about it. Overall, the cities have become unlivable nightmares. There's no affordable housing, no affordable living, and I don't settle for roommates. I want to be independent, you know, like an American, and that's not a thing anymore. Overall, every day as time goes on, America's beginning to look like China. And that's what I am talking about on these videos. But like, most people, especially in this country, don't seem to listen or understand anything that I talk about in it. It just seems like in America, the land of the free and opportunity, that just seems like it's false advertising now compared to what it used to be. Like, when I've done research of what third world countries and other undeveloped countries are like, such as Dominican Republic, Cuba, China, Russia, the Middle Eastern countries, and other countries like Haiti that are poverty, all of those countries, I noticed America is kind of starting to look like all of them, especially where people work day and night and they still live in poverty. Like, what really makes me sad is that there are Americans here that will have that governance brought here. For example, this is a really old Toyota Corolla, 2007, with like 350,000 miles on it for all I know. Like, the odometer stopped working after 299,999 miles a year ago, so it's unknown how many miles are on it now. This car is paid for, so with inflation of cars and the payments, I really do not want to get a new car for that exact reason, is because cars are just so expensive now. And I explained about that on my Suburban video. Like, inflation for vehicles, repairs, and registration are so high on the rise, no one can afford to own, maintain, or repair a car at minimum wage, let alone $18 an hour if you're living rent-free. Like, it's not an affordable transportation. And in the American area, like the suburbs, you need a car to get just about anywhere. And if a car is not an affordable source of transportation, then this country's gonna go down to the ground, and it already is. I think the problem with this country is that everything is so unaffordable and everything just seems limited to everyone. I think everyone's survival instinct in this country is more for themselves and less for everyone. And it's causing people to be greedy and selfish. And it's really sad to see that, because we came to this country to escape persecution, poverty, hunger, and taxes. We were known as a tax-free nation after the Boston Tea Party until the feds came to America in 1913. And the thing is, I'm not sure if everything we are experiencing is a population issue or if it's an issue of greedy people, because we're not the only country that has this problem. Like, 2020 alone was a bizarre year. Like, COVID happened, and then the entire economy shut down for a year and a half, where people were out of work and nearly getting evicted and not making money, relying on a stimulus check from the government. Then after 2021, when everything reopened, inflation was skyrocketing to where nobody wanted to work anymore, and they still don't. Then I remember they were trying to mandate the vaccine with, like, get a vaccination card in order to go shopping, keep your job, or go to an establishment, and basically have a microchip put into your arm, just like you see on those sci-fi movies. Then after 2022, when the Russia and Ukrainian war happened, the whole topic of COVID and the vaccination mandate was over, like it never happened. What was scarier was people were just complying to it like a bunch of sheep. And nobody even questioned as to what was in that vaccine. Like, you're going to put something in your body and you don't question as to what's in it. Compared to like 5 years ago and now, the vibe and feeling of this area went from being colorful and full of adventures with lots of activity going on, but now it just feels like it's colorless and the reality is distorted a little bit. Like, I've had this fear since I was in California, entering a military base where I was treated like a terrorist, basically. It's a long story. I plan to make a video of that. That deserves its own video. But I've always felt like police and SWAT team are going to come to my house every day and break in and take me to jail. Because that's how you see in third world countries. Like, they'll barge at your door demanding access. And because America is becoming a third world country, I feel like that reality is approaching day by day. Another part that I want to add is, after everything I've said, for those keyboard warrior sheep or non-believing people about this country, think about this very, very carefully. In the US, countrywide, we have no money whatsoever. They don't have money to clean up the abandoned buildings and rebuild things around it like homes and businesses. They don't have money to expand the cities. They don't have money to take care of the local businesses that are struggling. They don't have money to give homeless people shelters or take care of the homeless situation. They've closed down schools, businesses, and other public facilities. They've even had to budget cut police in areas like Los Angeles and San Francisco. I mean, like, really, how is it that we have no money for anything, and they increase our taxes all the time, and they are printing trillions and trillions of dollars from their henchmen at the Federal Reserve, and yet we have no money whatsoever? They have plenty of money for wars and prisons and police officers, but we don't have money for the infrastructure and the US citizens. They have money to bring illegal immigrants who have no right to even be in this country, but we don't have money for the US citizens. They have money to give the illegal immigrants food, shelter, and a place to live, but we don't have money to give homeless people a home, such as myself. They have money for bullets, guns, and military technology and equipment, but we don't have money for the country. They seem to have money to give to Ukraine and Israel, but we don't have money for American citizens. This is the world that we live in, and that's why I say, forget the government, forget the whole system that ties this whole infrastructure together, because it's a total joke. Like, this country has become a total joke since 2020. Here's another thing you need to observe and sink in. If the henchmen at the Federal Reserve are printing trillions and trillions of dollars, then why are businesses not accepting cash? Why are they trying to ban cash? Why are they suddenly trying to make cash obsolete? Like, how is it that nobody is accepting cash and their excuse is always, oh, we have a coin shortage and cash shortage? What kind of bullshit is that? The Federal Reserve prints our money, trillions after trillions, in almost every big city around the country, and yet we don't have cash? We don't have money? Like, how is that possible? Like, how come most people haven't figured that out yet? Like, really think about that. They're printing money and printing it and printing it and printing it, but we don't have cash. They don't accept cash. They want a digital currency. And they have money for AI bots that are going to take over all our jobs. They have money for 15-minute cities, but they don't have money for our own infrastructure. And that's why I'm saying America is really not America anymore. And I'm making this video because I need to say it, and others need to say it too. We need to raise our voices loud. I'm going to conclude this video. Peace.